Hi there, welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. I'm Bill Schwab and I'm going to teach you something else today. What we're working on is an addendum, or should I say an updated version of a video I did on the digital negative series, which you can see linked up here right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link this into the old video, and this is going to become sort of a new video for part 4 of that series, which was on actually the curve creation. Now, this will be 4.1, but what I'm going to do through this video is use the Quick Curve DN Pro program that Richard Boatwell has released. Now, unfortunately for all you Windows users, this is a Mac only program. So I'm hoping that you're working with a Mac, or if not, you have access to one. Tends to be a lot easier with the digital negative series that we're working with, and also with QTR. Now again, this video will also be using the Quadtone Rip program, which you can see right here, just quadtonerip.com. Now that's also in the series that's up here right now, the series on digital negatives. There's one on installing Quadtone Rip. So you have to go through those videos, or you have to have Quadtone Rip installed right now to use what I'm going to be going through and showing you today. Now, there is the other video that I said, which is linked up here, which is the original part 4, which was using the Quick Curve DN program, which is just the simple program, which is still available. I think that Richard Boatwell is still upgrading it. But this is going to be using specifically the Quadtone Profiler Quick Curve DN Pro, I believe. And to make this a lot easier, just go to the links below in the video, and there'll be a bit.ly link that will take you directly to the purchase page for these programs. Anyway, and if you do so, that's kind of nice because it gives me a little bit of a juice too for showing you how to do this. But anyway, so what we're going to be doing is downloading, as you'll see right here, this is where you'll go if you just go to the direct link. It'll take you right here. You can download the Quadtone Profiler Pro DN right there. It's $139 at the making of this video. If you're a member of my Patreon, which you can also find out below, there's a code for a slightly better discount. But for now, just kind of go here and you'll be able to purchase here. Now you can also see that if you go down, and still available for $75, is the Quadtone Profiler Quick Curve DN version 2. Now that's just a more simple version of the one that we're going to be using today. Now, and I'm only going to be showing you in this video pretty much the same things that does. But it's just got a little bit newer interface now, and there's a few more things that are really helpful in the Pro version that I will get to in future videos. And one of those is one that I'm working with right now, where you can bypass QTR completely, and or Quadtone Rip completely, and use just your printer driver in Photoshop. So this is going to allow those of you that are working with other types of printers the chance at doing this as well. Now, again, this is done with Quadtone Rip, which supports only the Epson line of printers, including the newer ones at the making of this video, which is the P700 and the P900. It just doesn't have support for the extra colors, which doesn't really matter because we're not using those colors in creating digital negatives anyway. Unfortunately, this is just for the Epson printers if we're doing the using QTR. However, that's what I'm saying, is that with the Pro version here, you can use just the Photoshop drivers. And what this does is, rather than creating quad files that you apply before you, as you're printing out your negative, these help you create either going by LUT files, which are even better because there's more points of measurement along the way, or with ACV curve files. So what it will do is you'll help you create corrected curves for you to use directly into Photoshop, so that what you do then is you'll open up your digital negative or your negative on the screen, and then you will apply that curve before you print it out through Photoshop. But again, that's for a future video. Right now we're using QTR only, and we're using the Quadtone Profiler Pro DN digital negative, which is made only for the Mac. So now with all of that out of the way, let's get to it, all right? Now, what I want you to do is you've got to download the program, of course, get it set up, get your activation key, that kind of thing, and then we'll move on to the next part of this. Let me also explain that I'm going to be using throughout this video, rather than using like in the old video, I'm going to be using the scanner to plot my 21-step wedge, my 21-step test wedges so that I can build the curve, but I'm going to be using the StepWedge tool. Now if you go here to downloads in the Quadtone Rip site, you'll go down here and you'll see here there's the print tool. Now I really like to use print tool. Now that is a program that I think it's $35 right now, but anyway, it's up to you whether you want to download that. You can print these through Photoshop, no problem. Let's go down. I'm going to be using the print tool here, all right? Now, I highly advise that for people just because it's easy and you can gang things up and you can move things around so that what I can do is use the same sheet of substrate of OHP when I'm printing out these digital tests. I can use that same sheet by just moving the test strip down a little bit. Now, you can do that also in Photoshop, but it's just a little more difficult. And what this does, it just gives you the field that you're printing on, and you can put as many images in there as you want and print them out under the same curve. So I like to use it, print tool. Data tool, we're going to be skipping on this one because we are going to be using the StepWedge tool, which also helps you create the data text files that you need when you're doing this. All right, so we're going to go down here and there's QTR StepWedge tool, zip. I really like to use that and it's really good on the Mac, and what it does is it downloads you the tool, it gives you a target 21 step wedge, and it also gives you a script that you add into Photoshop, and then you run your script through Photoshop as you're reading your test strips that you've scanned, and it really works well in automating that data text file, which you again take and plug into Richard's program that we use as our correction curve for our correction curves. I know this sounds a lot very confusing at this point, but just stick with me and I'll get you through it, all right? So anyway, now you're going to want those. Now also, when you go over and you're downloading out of Black and White Mastery here, Richard Boatwell's site, when you're downloading these programs over here, they also come with a folder that's a resource folder. Now, you're going to also want to download that and get it someplace where you're going to want to use it very easily. And what I do is I drop it over onto the side here into one of the let's see, you can see over here, one of the sidebar items on in my Mac. So that way I can hit that. And there's like Quadtone Rip, I can get to that very easily. It's good to do that just so you're not searching through your directories and things to find what we're going to be working with. So today we're going to be working with Quadtone Rip quite frequently, and we're going to be working with the Quadtone Profiler Pro DN and the resource folder that I'm showing you right here. All right? So now, first what I want you to do, after you've done this and you've downloaded everything and gotten it all set up, I'm going to close that. I want you to open up the program that you've downloaded, and I've got mine down here on my loading dock. It's easy to do that way. I would put it down there if I were you. And let's see, so there's the Pro version. I'm going to open that up, and this is what you get now when you open that up. It opens up these different 8 choices of things that you can do with this program. Now this is what's really cool about the Pro program, is there's a lot of things that you can do, and there's things that I have not even figured out myself here yet. So basically we're going to be only using 2 of these modules at this time. We're going to be using the starter curve setup module, and we're going to be using the gray curve linearization module. Now as you can see, there's other ones: custom curve creation, color tint linearization, quad curve blending, quad editor utility, ink channeling remapping, quad levels utility. These are all things that give you complete control over your printer and the printer nozzle, so that you can build your own curves, and you can build blending curves and curves that will work together well in, say, the gum over process, or in, if you're doing duotone printing in some way in your alternative process printing, or using digital negatives to make some sort of a duotone. It helps you do that as well. There's also things in here where you can adjust your curve that you've already created. Say we've made a nice corrected curve and it makes a really beautiful print. But at a certain point, there's a print that you want, that you just want to spark it up a little bit. You know, you just want to pump it up a little bit. You don't want to have to build a whole new curve, and you don't want to have to do contrast control through your chemistry. You can do that through this program by opening up the curve that you already are working with and that you really like, and then you can compress it a little bit, or you can move it up, and you can brighten it a little bit. And what it does is it brightens it along the whole scale. You know what I mean? So it just helps you make a slightly different or a slightly more contrasty version, or actually even a slightly less contrasty version of the curve that you already like to work with. So there's all kinds of things that you can do with this new program that unfortunately I'm not going to show you in this one, and I may show you some of them in additional ones. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to do a video on creating curves with the ACV files and the LUT files to bypass QTR in the future. But for now, we're just going to be using these two modules that I'm telling you about. All right, so we're going to go in here to the Quadtone Pro resource files. And in here, you're going to see several things. And what we're looking for right now is the QCDN blocking density curve. All right, that's a quad file, .quad. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take this file and we're going to want to use that and put it over into our profiles, the quad printer that we've added. So let's see here. What we're going to do is I'm going to open up Quadtone Rip in a new tab here. And so I've got that tab over here, and in here you can see I've got my profiles, right? So in here I've got my profiles. I open up, and what I like to do when I do load Quadtone Rip is I like to, under here where you can see under where I've opened up the profiles, there will be a whole host of different printers that there are profiles for. Now, it just gets confusing when I'm trying to set this all up. So basically what I'll do is I'll take and I'll remove all of those different folders that have nothing to do with my printer. So basically what I've left here for me is the P800, because I'm using the Epson P800 UC inks printer. All right? So as you can see, that's right here. I open it up, and right now I've taken that Quadtone, that blocking density curve, and I've already copied it over into my my P800 profiles here, okay? So what I want to do is after I've done that, then I'm going to do, as is, you know from looking at the other videos if you've looked at this, and I highly recommend you look at the other videos, the one that I have about loading QTR in before you get to this one, unless you know what you're doing at this point. All right, so again, what we're going to do after we've loaded that quad file in there, that curve in there for the blocking density, we're going to run that command. Now we run that, what it does is it opens up a terminal window. And that terminal window runs the program, and it adds all of the curves into Quadtone Rip that come with Quadtone Rip. And unfortunately at this point, it's going to add every curve that I've ever created in there. So that's not going to happen to you, but to me it happens. I have never figured out how to remove those old curves. Even though I remove them physically, the quad files, they still remain in there. So there has to be an initialization file someplace that I have not figured out yet. And I've just never taken the time to write to somebody smarter than me and find out how to get those out of there. So I'm just saying that when we open up the curves, you're going to see a lot of curves that are not part of this demonstration right now. I'll show you the ones that are most important. So anyway, now what's happened is by doing that, I have now entered, and I have entered that Quadtone density ink checking curve. I have loaded that into Quadtone Rip so that when I go to print out the test strip, I can apply that curve to it. Now what this is doing, this is the very first step in this whole process of using the Quick Curve DN, is that you need to find out your density, your ink density. And that's what this does. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the resources folder where I have all of my files. And now, after I've taken that quad and I've loaded it, now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take the blocking density target TIFF. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to print that out. So I'm going to open up Print Tool, which is the way that I work with this. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to take the QCDN blocking density target TIFF, which is this right here, all right? And I'm going to drag that over onto my print file, my print tool. Now what I'll do is I've got it set up right now for an 8.5 by 11 sheet because I'm using an 8.5 by 11 sheet of Pictorial OHP to print on. So what I want to do is I want to move this, this strip all the way up to the top, all right? Because I'm going to end up using this whole sheet. So what I'll do is I'll add my new strip in here, and then the strip after that I'll add in here, and I'll keep using the same OHP, so I'm not wasteful, and the stuff's not cheap, and you know, I don't want to have to use an 8.5 by 11 sheet to make a 3/4 wide test strip. So anyway, I put this up here, and then I am going to run the print. Now as you can see, it opens up, and I've got my old printer, my regular printer, my Epson SCP-800 printer chosen. Now what I've done is I've added in a virtual printer with QTR, with Quadtone Rip. So there's a quad printer in there as well. It doesn't really exist in physical, you know, obviously it's my same printer, but it gives me control of it in a different way. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to pick Quad P800, which is that printer, okay? Now that's going to change my printer driver here over to the point where I go down here to layout and I can choose Quadtone Rip. Okay, I'll choose that and it's going to open up a whole other page for me to work with. Now as you can see, I've got Quadtone Rip 8-bit. I'm working in 16-bit, so I like to change that up to 16-bit. Really doesn't matter that much which way you go because the human eye at this point when you're doing this cannot really perceive that in the processes that we're working with. But I like to work in 16-bit just because I have it and because I can. Now, I'll go down here to curve 1, and what you want to do is go down here and I'll open that up, and as you can see, like I told you, there's a million curves in here. Not a million, but there's a lot of curves in here that have nothing to do with what we're doing right now. These are just curves that I've created over the years to work in different processes with. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for that blocking density. All right, so let's go here and we're going to find the blocking density curve 8 ink, and there it is right there. So I'm going to choose that curve. All right, so see that shows up in here. I'm going to choose that curve. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to leave my resolution at 28 dpi. I'm going to change my speed to unidirectional. Now I like to do that because it gives the ink a bit of time to dry and it helps with any potential banding that you might get. Now a lot of people don't really, they'll go bidirectional, it doesn't really matter to them. I like to use unidirectional, and it's just part of my workflow. And part of my workflow in all of this is consistency in my workflow, right? And that's what I am. I'm a man of consistency when I work, and I like to do everything the same way every time because it's easier to figure out where you might have gone wrong in that time. So anyway, consistency is I use unidirectional, okay? So once I've got that all set up, I want to put my substrate in the printer, and then I'm going to run print. So let's do that right now. We're going to make the printout, and then I am going to take you into the darkroom and we're going to make some test strips, all right? So stick with me. So I'm here in the darkroom, and what I got to do now is make up some test strips. And what I like to do when I'm doing my test strips is to make them all up at one time so that I've got kind of a consistent coating, and everything is all about consistency when you're building these curves. Like I said before. So what I want to do is I want to make up a bunch of test strips coating the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a larger sheet of paper that's at least 8.5 inches wide, because my test strip is about that wide. And I'm going to coat a portion of this paper, dry it out, and then I'm going to cut it into strips that are about 3/4 of an inch wide so that I can do test strips here on my blocking density and all of my other 21-step curves that I'm going to print after this one to do our curve building. So I've printed out the blocking density test here with with the blocking density curve that comes with the resources in the Quick Curve DN. And what you've got to do is be really careful when you do print this out, because the final square will print super black. There's just so much ink density going in there that it's going to come out and it's just going to be a puddle of ink. And I've let this one dry for a little while. What you also might want to do is take the hairdryer, dry it out very carefully, because you'll blow that puddle around. So anyway, you want to make sure that that one is dry when you're done, because you don't want to transfer it over to the paper or smudge it or do anything else. Very rarely is that square used, but it is important not to, you know, to smear it all over your paper, that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm ready to go here. It's dry, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and coat this piece of paper. We're going to dry it out, and then I'm going to cut it into strips over here on the paper cutter. So what I'm going to do is coat it in the way that I normally would coat when I'm printing whatever process it is that I am testing for. We're going to be using platinum and palladium in this test right now, but if you were doing this with cyanotype or anything else, you would do this same process in creating your test strips. So what I will do is get my brush is already wet and ready to go. I'm going to take and measure out my palladium here. First, my ferric oxalate. I'm going to use about 10 drops of each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is probably a little bit of an overkill, but just want to make sure I have a nice, well-coated piece of paper for my tests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's my palladium. I've already put my ferric oxalate in. I'm going to use a little bit of tween like I always do. So I'm going to drop a couple drops of tween in there. And we're pretty much ready to go. So I always like to mix this up really well. Now, the whole platinum palladium printing process, if you want to see that, I have a whole series on it if you want to look up here right now. But that's not part of this video. I'm not going to be teaching you how to print the process, do the process. So I've got my emulsion ready to go here. Put it on the paper, and I'm just going to start brushing it in. And like I say, I want to go corner to or edge to edge. There's a little bit left in my. So as you can see, I got a nice rectangular coating here of palladium. All right, now I'm going to go wash my brush out. I always take care of cleaning the brush out before I do anything else. Dab it on a piece of paper towel like that, and then I plug my shot glass with another piece of paper towel. Okay, now this is kind of laid in there nicely, and what I'm going to do is take the hair dryer and dry it down. And as you can see, as I'm drying it, the paper evens out and gets a little bit darker yellow. Now that's just with this palladium process. Okay, we're ready to go there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it here on the paper cutter. Just cut some 3/4 strips on here. Let me get it nice and even. There we go. There, so now I've got myself 4 nice test strips to work with, all right? So what I'd like to do with those is then take them and put them into a dark box. Let me grab something here. So I've got them in the paper safe box and they're all ready to go. And so what I can do now is just pull a new piece of paper out of here. I don't have to coat another one, and I know that I've got several test strips that are evenly coated and consistently coated so that I can test my process correctly. So what I'm going to do here while I've got you is I'm going to take out the first test strip, and we are going to pull down a contact printing frame here and open it up. And then I'm going to take my test, the blocking density strip that I've taken, and I'm going to go emulsion to emulsion, so yellow side to the emulsion side of this. And then I am going to put it here carefully inside of the print frame and put the back on. And now you can see that I have my test strip covered by my negative here, or my test strip, my blocking density curve. And I'm going to print this at my maximum density, my maximum black. Now, You'll want to figure that maximum black out for yourself by just doing a test strip. You'll know what your maximum exposure is in your plate burner. So what we're going to do is mine is 9 minutes, so we're going to record this we're going to expose this for 9 minutes now. So I'm going to take this over to the plate burner and put it in there for 9 minutes. Okay, now it's exposing, and come back here in 9 minutes and we'll process it and see what it looks like. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go along and pick out whichever strip or whichever blocking density square is the first one that goes bright white. And then what I'm going to do usually is I go one more after that. So what we're going to do is wait till we process it, dry it out completely, run it through its clearing baths and wash it and dry it out completely, just like a print. So we want to know exactly what it's going to respond to or how it's going to respond on a regular print. Okay? Sorry, I got a little bit of word salad going on here right now. I don't know what's up with it today, but rather than re-edit, I'm going to stick with it. So anyway, 9 minutes on this and we'll be back. Okay, so now I've made my exposure here, pulled it out of the print burner and the plate burner, and we've got you can see the latent image on there right now. So let's take it over here and put it in the developing tray, and we're going to develop it out. And once again, what we're looking for is the first square with a pure white. So there we go. And you can see that we've got a lot of white squares. And that's because we're basically doing the ink density test. All printers are different. So on mine, it's looking like we're getting to a clear white somewhere around the, maybe the 40 to 45 zone. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop this all the way through, and I'm going to run it through the different clearing baths and then wash it and dry it just like I would a print before I make any kind of a determination of which square is the correct one. So I'll get this done and then I'll come back to you and we'll determine that. So now that we've established our blocking density, which is what I'm deciding to do here right now, it's like after drying and everything in the darkroom, I've decided that I'm going to go with the number 50 patch on this because it kind of looks like somewhere around 40 is where my white is, maybe 45. So I'm just going to go up to number 50 for this. And so just remember the 50 blocking density, and then what we need to do is go back over here to Quadtone Curve Builder. And what we're going to do is open that back up again, Pro version, and we've already been through setting up our density, right? So now what we've got to do is make our starter curve, and we're going to make our starter curve based upon that. So we're going to go to over here where you can see starter QCD and starter curve setup. We're going to open that up, and now for this printer again, I'm working with a P800, so I'm going to set it up as the X800, X880. So if I was working with a 3880 perhaps or a 2880, this would be where you would start with your starting curve. But I'm with a P800, so I'm going to start there as well. So I want to go down here to process curves, and I want to set it up as a standard starter curve. Now, as you can see, there's other choices in there. There's carbon transfer, there's traditional cyanotype, Lodema grade 2, that's for doing contact printing with silver chloride paper. Ilford MG Classic, that's another contact printing with silver gelatin paper. And then there's also QTP Piezo Pro, and those are for those of you that might be using the piezo inks. But I'm not covering that in this. We're just using the basic inks that come with your Epson printer. And so we're going to do our standard starter curve as just a standard starter curve. That's where we're going to start. Now, when I was talking about the number 50 that we picked off of here, you're going to now want to go down here where you can see main blocking density. And I'm going to cut that back here to 50 because that's the number that we determined here on the test strip. So we're going to go down to 50, and we've set that. Now, what we're going to do now is save current starting curve. So here, what I'm going to do is I want to save this right into my P800 UC profile that I showed you in the beginning of this video. So I'm going to go over here and open that up, and I have already actually done it as my V4 starter curve. Now I'm saying V4 is because this is like version 4 that I've done over the last couple of weeks. So I'm just going to say V4 starter, I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to say save. I'm just going to replace it because I've done this already. Now here I should mention that while I like to save my curves directly into my printer profile folder, sometimes if your permissions are not set up correctly on your Mac, Quick Curve DN won't be allowed to do this. So to work around this, what you can do is set up a separate folder for your curves, save it into that folder, and then actually take the extra step of copying that from there into your printer profiles folder within Quadtone Rip. Now, I'm really not sure why this is. I think it's a permissions issue. I was able to solve it on another person's computer recently by going into the permissions of those folders and changing them to read and write for everyone. Now, this might not be the case with you, and your workaround in this case would be to save your files from Quick Curve DN into a specific folder for them, and then take them in an extra step, copy them out, and put them into your, as you can see here, copy them and put them into your printer profile folder. So anyway, you may not run into that problem, but if you do, this is a workaround. Now, I'll take this time also to say that sometimes when you're running your install command like this, you'll run into a problem where permission is denied and it won't create that curve in your folder. This is due to much the same reason, and if this is the case, it usually happens after you've made an upgrade of your operating system in your Mac, or if for some reason it's perhaps during a new install of this. What you'll want to do in that case, if you run into that problem, you just go back to the install package for Quadtone Rip, you reinstall it over itself. It's very simple, it takes no time at all really, and it doesn't destroy any of the files you've created up to that date. And in reinstalling it, it will clear the permissions and will allow you to save those quad files or those clear files into Quadtone Rip. All right? Now, what I need to do is I go back from Richard's program here, from the Quick Curve DN program, the Pro, and I go back over here to the P800UC where I have just saved that starter curve, and again, I want to run this install P800 command. So I'm going to run that, and now what that's going to do is it's going to add in the new V4 starter curve. And then what I'm going to do after that is go into Print Tool here where we started out. See, now in Print Tool I've got the original blocking density target that we printed here. Now what I want to add, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to go back to the Quadtone, the Quick Curve resource folder, and out of here now I'm going to pick the 21-step grayscale negative TIFF. Now if I open that up, you'll see that this is a negative of our target grayscale, our ideal grayscale. So what I want to do with that now is I'm going to drag that over here into Print Tool, and I'm going to put that right up here underneath the last one that we did, so that what we can do then is print out below the original blocking density TIFF. And so what we're going to do now that we know our positioning, we are going to pull that out of there by going over here and deleting that. Now when we print it out on the same piece of OHP that we printed the original blocking density on, we will have the test strip move down a little bit further, and therefore we get to use the same sheet. Anyway, okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this out, and then we're going to go back into the darkroom, and we're going to once again print this out at the 9 minutes for our maximum black time here, or whatever your maximum black is. Now that we've determined our maximum density and we've gone ahead and printed out our starter curve, we want to print out that starter curve in our original time for our maximum black. So that in our case is 9 minutes. All right, so let's go do that. I'm going to run the print and choose Quadtone Rip, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find my V4 starter down here. You can see that. I'm going to choose that, and now I'm going to print it out. All right. I'll see you again once I get this printed out. I'm not going to bother you with the darkroom work again. You know what you're doing there. Now, while we're printing out our first starter curve, we're going to also need to load the StepWedge tool into Photoshop scripts. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now what I've done, excuse me, I've taken the StepWedge, QTR StepWedge folder when you downloaded it originally from the Quadtone Rip site. It gives you a folder, QTR StepWedge tool. So what I've done is I've taken that folder and I've dragged it also over onto my sidebar here, as you can see, just to make things easier. And if you open that up, you'll see that it's got 3 files in there. It's got QTR StepWedge tool JSX. That's the script that we're going to want to put into the scripts folder of Photoshop. We have our original starter curve printed out now. We've got the QTR StepWedge tool JSX. We've got the QTR StepWedge tool PDF. So, and then it gives you the 21 step gray TIFF. Now this, as you can see here, is another target TIFF. This is a positive 21 step wedge. And with this, we are going to use this in StepWedge tool to read our StepWedge that we print out against that one to do our adjustments in our final curve. So anyway, what we want to do now is take this StepWedge tool, JSX, and I want to copy that. So I'm going to copy that file. And now I want to go over here to Applications, and wherever you are on your computer, find your Adobe Photoshop folder. Here I am here. Let's see, Adobe, where am I? Adobe Photoshop 2022, right here. I go down here. You're going to want to go down and find the Presets folder. Then you're going to open up the Presets folder, and in the Presets folder, you're going to find Scripts. Now I want you to open up Scripts folder, and then you're going to right-click and paste the item in there. And now you should have that in your Scripts folder for Photoshop. Now, the next time that you open Photoshop, that tool will be available to you, and I'm going to show you how to use that in a couple of minutes. But for now, just make sure that you've closed Photoshop and reopened it after adding that script in so that Photoshop identifies it and knows where it is. All right, so you've done that. We are going to go now and take this new starter curve into the darkroom, and I'm going to print it out on one of the test strips that I made prior, okay? And I'll come back out after it has been processed like a normal print, and we will then make a scan of it on our scanner. We will read it with StepWedge tool, and we'll see where we actually are as far as creating our straight line curve. All right? Let's go to it. Okay, so this is the first starter curve. I took the film in there that we printed the first test strip out on, and I've now printed that test strip much like I did the original ink density test, and this is what we've come up with. Now, it's a decent curve, but it's not the curve. As you can see, it's a little too dark in these areas. You know, I'm guessing that the darker areas look okay from maybe 50% on down, but from there on up, it's a little blocked up. You know, I've got a nice white, but even the first square here of the gray goes into kind of a muddy gray. So what's going to happen, we're going to take this, we're going to put it on the scanner, and we're going to read that. And once we have a scan of this, we can take it into Photoshop and we can use the StepWedge tool. Now, I'm going to do that right now. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the scanning of one of these. I use Silverfast as my scanning interface. Now, you might use ViewScan or another one. I highly advise you to use anything other than the scanning tool that comes with your, or the scanning interface that comes with your Epson printer. Because, you know, if you're using an Epson printer, and I'm kind of assuming you are, a lot of people are these days. Now, what I wanted to tell you though is that if you're using that Epson scanner, it will always, even if you tell it not to make any adjustments to your scan, it will always make some sort of an adjustment to your scan. Now you don't want that at all. You want to take and you want to have just basic flat scan of your StepWedge. You don't want to do any kind of corrections on it whatsoever. So anyway, let me get this over here onto the scanner, and I like to put it vertically. I like to put my strip vertically on the scanner because that gives me my, and also with the white square at the top because it's just part of my workflow that I was telling you about before. It keeps me consistent. All right, so now what I'm going to do is go over here and scan this. I've got to run a pre-scan first, and you'll see what I mean here on how I put it vertically on my flatbed here. Now you can see here I've got my white square up at the top, I've got my black square down at the bottom. I'm going to bring my masking in for the scanning, just so I just scan a smaller area. Your scanning tool might allow you to do this, I'm not really sure, but anyway, I'll turn it a little bit there. So now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say that I'm going to put it in my folder, into Quadtone Rip over here. I've got my scans, as you can see. Now what I'm going to do, I've got a bunch of other scans in here, but what I'm going to do is start this out as V4 scans, as you can see here. So I'm going to say open, and over here in View Scan, it's going to put it into my scans, my Quadtone Rip scans folder. Now I'm going to name this file V4_starter. So that will give, and I'm going to scan it as a TIFF file. Now if you can see, I go down here and I don't do any adjustments whatsoever. I'm opening up my histogram like so. I am giving it no adjustments whatsoever in here. So then I'm just going to run it a scan. Now this is the part where you're going to take it into Photoshop, and we are going to adjust it in such a way that we can read it with StepWedge tool. Okay, so we're going to go back over here to Photoshop. Let me open that up. We're going to find that file that we just made. We're going to go into Quadtone Rip, scans. And in scans, we're going to find version 4 starter TIFF. We're going to bring this over to Photoshop and drop it there to open it up. There we've got it. So now what I want to do is, because my target StepWedge has the white square on the left, I need to adjust this file to be the same as that. So first, I'm going to go up here to Image. I'm going to go to Image Rotate. And I'm going to go 90 degrees counterclockwise. So you can now see that I've got it in the correct position for doing my reading. Now the other thing that is very important that I do here is this was scanned as an RGB file. Now I advise that you not scan it as a grayscale file, scan it as an RGB file just to get the most information into that scan that you can. But now once you've got it in here, you're going to go to Image Mode, you're going to go over to Grayscale, and you're going to make that into a grayscale, okay? Now, here's where the tricky part comes in. We're also going to want to go over here, and we're going to want to open up from the QTR StepWedge tool. We're going to want to open up our target gray TIFF. So we're going to go over here, we're going to drag it down onto Photoshop, and we are going to also open that up. So now you can see we've got two files open. We've got the target, and we've got our actual. Now you can see here that the target looks a lot different than the actual. Now you can see in here it's kind of muddy and darkened in, whereas in here it's a little bit more open. And that's what's going to happen when we make this adjustment. It's going to read our curve that we've just created from our starter curve. It's going to read that against the one that it should be. And it's going to give us a data file that's based upon, that has the corrections in there that would correct it from being what it is into what it should be. Now this is where you're going to be using the StepWedge script that we just put into Photoshop. Now first we're going to go up here to the marquee, rectangular marquee, and we want to choose a mask that's right inside our first step on the wedge and our 21st step on the wedge. And as you can see, this is where we're going to begin. So what we're going to do is drag a rectangular box across there, and we're going to stop here before we get to the white again on our black square. So we're going to hold up on that, and now what we want to do is go back up here to File, Scripts. Now you can see under Scripts that we've added StepWedge tool, and there it is. And if it's not there, you should find it by going to Browse and opening up your Scripts folder again, but it should be in there. Run StepWedge tool. Now as you can see, it comes up with a QTR scan StepWedge tool. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure up in here that this is at 21 steps. On yours, when you just open it up in the beginning, it defaults to 20. So you're going to want to make sure that's 21 steps. Over here, you're going to want to set up these step numbers according to the way that I tell you here and not what the default is. Now for here, we've got white D minimum, middle gray, black. We're going to want to go 0, 10, and 20. Those are under the step numbers. Now over here under lab values, we're going to want to change this to 97, and then we're going to go 54 for our middle gray, and we're going to go 11 for our black. Now, I could get into explaining this right now, but I'm not going to. Just kind of stick with me and do the steps as I'm explaining here. Now, once I've done that, I say calibrate, and it's going to go through and it's going to run calibrations on that, and as you can see, I'll say continue, and as you can see in here, it's add a layer into Photoshop, and this is the, turn it off there, this is the StepWedge sample data. So you can see here it added a little square into each one of the steps along the way. So it's just setting it up so it can make a reading off of those. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to open up our test version, the one that we want to run this from, the one that we want to compare against. So we're going to do the very same thing here. We're going to open up our Marquee tool. We're going to drag it across inside of the squares, being careful not to go off into the white on this end. We're going to let that up, and now we're going to once again go up here and we're going to run StepWedge tool. So we go down to scripts and we go to StepWedge tool, and we're going to run that again. Now it's going to open up this dialog box once again, and once again it should say what the settings are you had just made it at, but make sure that it's where we set originally. 0, 10, 20, 97, 54, 11, 21 steps you're reading. So we're going to say calibrate once again. So now what it's doing is it's once again going through, and it's doing like it did on our curve. It's setting up these little squares along the way here that you can see, and it's setting itself up, and it is reading that step wedge. So we'll say continue there. Now what we want to do is we want to go back to our original that we did, which is the step wedge that we created from our starter curve, and we're going to once again run the script. QTR step wedge tool. Now you can see you get a dialog box that's slightly different than it was before. And in here it says number of steps in wedge 21. That's what you want. Now you're going to say read steps. So we go here, and as you can see, it's created this data file, and we're going to say save data file. Now, I like to save the data file into a folder that I've created within my Quadtone Rip called data files. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to call this V4 starter text, because this is the text file that's coming off of our starter curve that we ran. Okay? So I'm going to say save that in there. Now I have that. Okay? Now we're going to go back over to the Quick Curve DN program, which was created by Richard Boutwell. Now again, I know this sounds convoluted and complex, but it used to be much more so, and as long as you follow me here, we should get through this just fine. So once again, we're going to open up DN Pro. Now it opens up again to where our curve setup was, our starter curve setup. Now we don't need that anymore, so we're just going to close this part of it. And we're going to go back to the original dialog box for the program, and we're going to go here to gray curve linearization, okay? So we're going to open up that part of it. So now we've got a completely different interface. And over here, if you can see, it says open measurement file. Now that measurement file is the data file that we just created with StepWedge tool in Photoshop, okay? So we want to open that measurement file. We go over to our scans or our data files where we were, and we find V4 starter text. Now I'm going to open that, and you're going to see right here on the screen, that's what our starter text, that's what our starter curve was. I mean, not only was it a little bit blocked in the more highlighted areas, it was pretty densely blocked up in the darker areas. So anyway, what you can see here, this red line is the actual curve that we made with the starter curve. And this green line is the target. Now, as you can see, it doesn't run from 0 to 0. Now that's because with this process of palladium, you're never going to get a complete, total crazy white, because the paper base itself is always a little bit there's always a little bit of detail in there, and there's always a little bit of value to that. So basically, you're never going to get a 0 there. And down here at the black end, you're never going to get a complete black with palladium. I mean, it's just the nature of the process itself. It's not like a silver process where you're going to get a complete D-max. You're going to get probably 82%, something like that. And that's what this is reflecting right now. So this is our target line. The green line, that's where we want to be. This is where we actually are right now. So to be able to make a correction on that based upon our correction measurement file here, we're going to have to open up the curve that we printed that with, right? So we have to correct the curve that we printed it with. So what we're going to do is over here, you can see in the program, you open up the quad file. And now the quad file that we're going to open up there is going to be the starter quad file that we printed, the starter curve that we printed this with. So we're going to go over here to P800UC. We're going to find that V4 starter quad. We're going to open it up. And then this here is going to show you our correction for all of that. Now this is the correction. It's looking pretty wild there because this was a pretty wild curve to begin with. But as you can see, this has given us now a correction for that. So what we're going to do is you look down here, we're going to export it as a quad file, Quadtone Rip quad file. We're going to say save. And we're going to go up here into our profiles folder, and we're going to now save this as V4 correction 1. Okay? Now, as you can see, I'm using underscores. Quadtone Rips like those. It doesn't like dashes. It doesn't like empty spaces. Always give it an underscore if you're putting some sort of a space in there. So we've got V4 correction 1. We're saving that in there. Now, we go back over here to Finder. We now open up this folder again. And as you can see in here, we have our correction 1 quad. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the install command again. Just like you always have to do when you add a new curve, you have to run that install command for your printer. So we're going to run that again. And as you can see, it loaded it in here. You can always go through here and look for some sort of mistakes or anything if it doesn't quite load it correctly, but it should load it correctly. I'll close that out. Now what we're going to want to do is we go back over to Print Tool once again. We open up Print Tool, and now we have our starter, our negative densities test on here, and we have our starter curve printed out. Now on this same piece of substrate, we're going to print our correction curve. So we're going to take this here, as you can see, which is where we previously were. We're going to drag it down the length of itself. We're going to put it there, and we are again going to run the print. Only this time we're going to go up here to our Quad P800 printer that we've loaded. We're going to go to Quadtone Rip, and this time we're going to go to V4 correction 1 curve. And that's going to be the curve that we're going to use to print out our next negative. So let me put this into the printer, and we'll run print, and then we'll go into the darkroom, and we'll make another test strip of this. And I'll be back out here to show you once again. And we'll once again go back to Photoshop, we'll scan it, we'll make a StepWedge tool determination of where we are on that straight line now. So stick with me. Okay, so we've printed out our next StepWedge, and I've already taken the liberty to put it on the scanner here, and we've run the scan of it, and I have the strip right here. So I'm just going to continue on with the same steps that we did before with the first the starter curve. Now, with any luck, we'll be pretty close this time. Now, it normally takes me 3 iterations of this or so to get to my final curve, but you never know. You get lucky at times, and this one's looking pretty good. So let me go here. We'll go to Image, Rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. We will go to Image Mode, Grayscale, Now it's good to be able to do this over and over again, and you get the benefit of repetition. You just want to make sure that you're working with a grayscale image all the time, and that sort of thing. So now we've got our image grayscaled out. We're going to take the mask and we're going to go across so that we can do our reading. Let's see, let's get this correct. As you can see, I've got it a little bit of an angle here, so I want to drop down a little bit further because I don't want to get any readings of white other than what I've already got in there. There we go. So now we are going to run StepWedge tool, script, run the tool, make sure everything's correct, calibrate. So continue. Now what I'm going to do is go back to my target wedge, and I'm going to take out this layer here because we're going to create a new StepWedge tool reading. We're going to go up here and we're going to say script and run the StepWedge tool once again. Make sure all the settings are correct. Yes, calibrate. Okay, so now we've got everything set up correctly. We've got our little squares in place so that it can read the steps. We're going to go back to our one that we've scanned ourselves. We're going to run the script once again. And now, once again, you'll see the different dialog box here. We'll read the steps. It's going to give me my data file. I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that into the data files, and I'm going to save it as V4 correction 1. So we're going to save that. I'm going to replace it. And we're going to go now back to the Quadtone Profiler. Now you can see where our original curve was. You know, pretty far off the mark. So with any luck, we're going to open up this text file and find out. So here we go, V4 correction 1 text. Boom, there you go. See that? That's amazing. So that's 2 iterations and I've hit it. You can see that I've got a little bit of variation right here, but otherwise I'm pretty much along there. Now I could run this one more time. I could create another correction curve based upon this correction, but the thing is that I'm there. I'm so close that it's every chance that if I run it again, it's going to go a little bit farther off. This is pretty good. You know, when you see a line like this that's very close to the line, you're there. So, hey. So anyway, so that version 4 correction text, this is my final. This is what I'm going to use as my final. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to, let's go back to P800 UC. I've got my version 4 correction quad here. What I'm going to do, because that's my final, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this my final palladium. So I'm going to say version 4 final palladium. Okay? Now that is now going to change that curve name in my curve choices to this final palladium. So let's do that. I've done that. Now what we have to do again is run the 800 command, the install command once again. So I'm going to do that. Now what will happen is if I go back to print tool, now if I wanted to do this again and I was going to run another iteration, I would move this down further. But anyway, so what I would do now is once I'll show you how you use your final curve. So you would run print. You would choose your printer as a Quad 800. You go down here to layout, hit Quadtone Rip, and now you're going to go down and you're going to find version 4 final palladium. And that's how you would want to print out your negatives from now on. So the way that this will work is now that you have your screen calibrated correctly, you know that any image that you get on your screen is going to be very close to that when you create your digital negative and then your final palladium print, or your final cyanotype print, or whatever type of print you're building your curve for. So every time now that you're going to want to go back, you're going to open up your picture, you're going to turn it into a grayscale, you're going to do the adjustments to the image that you want to make it look good on your screen. and you're going to change it into, you're going to invert it into a negative. You're going to take that negative image and you're going to flip it horizontally, because that's what happens with the negative, is you go emulsion to emulsion. So your image is going to have to go to flipped it horizontally before you print it. And then you're going to make a print of that image, and it's going to look very, very close to the image that's on your screen. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. This is pretty amazing that in version 2 of this Quadtone Profiler video, that I should hit it in 2 iterations. So anyway, yeah, now if you'll go down below in the video, you'll also see a link where you can go and get a PDF, which is I've got a PDF that I've created that basically gives you notes of each step as we've gone through here in the video. So that's so you've got something that you can look at in front of you, and you don't have to keep going back and forth through the video. Now that's also available online. You can also, I think I'll have a link in there to a little print offer that I have, which is a print and a negative, so that you can order a digital negative and the print that's made from that. I have it for, I think it's a $75 fee. I'll give you a link to that below as well. But anyway, there you go. This is the 4.1, number 4.1 in my digital negative series. This will replace the one that's prior, that was for building a curve with the Quick Curve DN, the regular program, not the Pro version. In the future, I'm going to get to some more of the features in the Pro version, but for now, this will be enough to keep you going. If you have any questions, put them down below. I'll get to them as fast as I can. If you'd like to join my Patreon address is in there as well. People that join my Patreon, they get a little bit quicker access to me, and I'll try to answer questions quicker in there than I do online. I've got a lot of videos, and it's kind of hard sometimes when questions come along on the videos because I don't find them right away. But anyway, if you're a member of my Patreon, you can write directly to me. And that's about it for now. I really appreciate it. If you've liked this and it's been helpful, give me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you'll know when I do other videos. I'll be definitely working on some more things coming up. And that's about it for now. I hope this helps. Happy printing to you. Take care. Bye-bye.